Well, hello, good morning and welcome to the latest Exeter Living Business Club. A professional services special we have for you this morning. We'll be featuring disparate tales from companies navigating this new world, just like you are, just like we are as a business. My name is Greg of Exeter Living's publisher Media Clash, and you would think that after last night's announcement there's only one place to begin. Well, not quite. We will come on to all of that, of course, what it might mean for these companies today, the sector, and of course, more interestingly perhaps, the Exeter as a whole, the whole business community responding to the announcements yesterday. We'll be joined by a distinguished panel of professional services companies, Marsh Commercial, Wollens, the solicitors, and GX accountants. I want to begin with a couple of parish notices, if I may, about some of the things we're doing and have been doing. Firstly, following the triumph of our Exeter Living Awards back in those long forgotten days, just pre-lockdown, March 12th, just before, we're doing it all again. Real life, we hope, on March 25th, the Great Hall, the University of Exeter. Nominations open in a month or so, and remaining sponsorships are now available. Secondly, and coming chronologically backwards, there's the launch of the Exeter Property Awards. The first time we're doing this, we've successfully had property awards in Bristol, Cardiff and Bath. They're daytime events, which provides a huge opportunity for those convivial business discussions afterwards at the bar, at which so much business is done. They celebrate all aspects of the property scene, from the agents, the developers, the builders, the architects, the suppliers, financial companies, commercial, residential, lettings, the whole piece. And we think it's a profound opportunity to bring the whole sector together. And we're absolutely delighted with the support we've had so far, most principally from Close Brothers, our headline sponsor, and also our current initial sponsors, Original Style and Wilmot Dixon. Please do talk to us about this. It's quite clear that property is one of those enduring sectors which, from a residential point of view, with the advantage of the stamp duty and all the continuing down from London money and so on, residential has been strong, commercial remains strong as well. It's a vibrant sector and we're delighted to be able to celebrate that at Sandy Park. It should be a great occasion. It'll be superb in both cases to bring businesses together in real life, because we all need to find out ways, to figure ways of redeveloping our business pipeline, that supply of new business opportunities. And we do think that whether entering, perhaps sponsoring, who knows, becoming a finalist, even winning one of those awards of itself can help generate substantial business. Because whatever travails we faced, and they have been pretty profound, we all have to find ways of just simply getting on with it. We have the hand we have in front of us, we play it as strongly as we can. And our nominations, we're in both cases for the awards, will be mindful of the year that we've all had. We know it's not been the best years, of course it hasn't been, and that might give some degree of caution about entering awards. But the truth is it's been this year for everyone. So it's more about the relative performance during that time. And we will have specific questions, also specific prompts about how you and your team have responded to this time, how you've engaged with your team, connected with the community, how you've navigated, as we say, these times. One other, of course, it's not impossible that circumstances, as we just heard further last night, may prevail and may prevent real-life gatherings. We don't know at this stage. We'll see. We'll cross that bridge if and when we come to it. Confident in the knowledge that virtual events absolutely rock. We had a brilliant similar event in Bristol just last week, with several thousands watching it online. You can have much greater breadth of engagement, clients, friends, family, whatever, and it means you've got the opportunity to bring people together. We don't know, of course we don't know if that is going to be required. We would prefer to be in real life, of course, for all the good reasons. We're very confident that virtual events can be extremely powerful if we have to go or choose to go that route. And we're no doubt also that the businesses of Exeter will be absolutely supportive and determined to find their routes to market and to support what we're doing to create value and to celebrate excellence in all forms. There is one more thing, just one more thing. It is in many ways the biggest thing for us in Exeter by some measure, which is we are absolutely delighted once more to be publishing Exeter Living. Our first issue will be out in a week or so's time, Friday, the the 2nd of October, celebrating the glories of Exeter, issue in, issue out once more. I have to say it's been a pretty emotional for us that, of course this is a business, of course we're a commercial company, but publishing magazines and running events is what we do. And for a creative company not publishing magazines, it turns out really, really tough. We've been sort of fretting on the sidelines, looking on. We've obviously kept our social media channels open. We've been using our email newsletters a lot, and we've had great support for those, and thank you. But we've not been able to publish. That now changes. We're back on the pitch, and we're determined to play our part to the absolute full. Like this, celebrating the best of Exeter, issue in, issue out. Promoting the businesses of Exeter, galvanising business thinking, such as today, providing help and insight where we can, and maintaining a plausibly positive tone, giving you reassurance and information about what is happening at Exeter and helping us all generate more business and enjoyment, yet more love this city. Good luck to us all. Now to today's business. The Exeter Living Business Club, of course, is recorded and will be available shortly on YouTube. You can ask questions, whether anonymously or in person, using the Q&A button at the bottom. I'll field those to our panel today. And I'll be interviewing briefly on your behalf, and then we'll open it out. These three: Charlotte McGregor of Wollens, Glenn Redler, GX Accounts. By the way, Glenn picked up the Business Services Award on behalf of NatWest at the Exeter Living Awards this last time. And Mark Minton of Marsh Commercial. And Marsh is the mighty sponsor of our Platinum Award on the night. Let's kick off, if we may, with Charlotte. If I could ask you to step forward and join us. Good morning, how are you?
Good morning, yeah, fine, thank you, yeah. Just recovering from a complete power outage in the centre of Exeter, so apologies for that, there was some disruption.
When you say just recovering, was that in like minutes ago or something?
Yes, 12 o'clock, yes, as we went live, so apologies.
Well, no, one of the joys of technology, I mean, gosh, you imagine if we'd had this pandemic in a prior time when we couldn't. Oh. One of the joys of technology, of course, is that we can share, never further apart yet closer still. One of the perils of technology is that awful things can happen unexpectedly.
Indeed.
We're delighted to welcome you, Charlotte. Tell us how this period has been for you, perhaps personally, but also managerially. How have you been responding?
Yeah, gosh, well, I mean, unprecedented is the word that everyone's been using, isn't it? And it really has been. I think the last few months have been such a steep learning curve for us all. And the good thing was that we were all in the same boat at the same time, so learning together. And I think that's the real strength of certainly the Exeter business community. We have all pulled together and shared ideas and found our way through to where we are now, which of course has changed again overnight, which I know we'll come on to later. So we found ourselves, like everyone else, in a position where we had to send most of our staff to work from home, and almost overnight had to make that happen with resources, because we weren't a business that was set up to allow all members of staff to work from home overnight. So we did that fairly successfully, I think, actually, and I'm very proud of how our staff have responded and engaged with us to make that work. I'm not going to pretend that we haven't found the last few months difficult, because we have. There have been challenges along the way, not least the drop-off of instructions was just like a cliff edge. You know, it really was incredible for the first 2 to 3 months of lockdown. But I'm pleased to say that we're on the road to recovery from that. So we're now back to pre-COVID levels of instructions. It is absolutely business as usual. We haven't made up all of what we lost in those 3 months, but I don't think there's any business that has really. I think everyone's going to have had a hit of some sort. And I think we've seen the shape of our business change in terms of the client base that we service. We've had significantly more residential property instructions come through in the last few months, post the stamp duty relief and the other measures put in place. So, you know, residential property is strong, and I caught the tail end of what you were saying there about residential property being strong. We echo that. Commercial property is an interesting one. I agree that in certain cases it remains strong, but company commercial deals have been put on hold, most definitely. So that was quite a big part, or is a big part of our business, and we have seen a drop off of those instructions where we've got mergers and acquisitions just being put on hold for the time being.
It seems to us, talking with other clients and so on, that there are a number of different sort of equal and opposite forces that work commercially, not necessarily exactly equal and opposite. One might be that companies are considering, of course, whether or not they need the same office space as previously, but within that, they're then kitting out the offices, perhaps smaller size or moving to smaller places, but at a higher spec, because the offices become a place of collaboration, a place you want to go to work rather than perhaps have to go to work. The other element is that there are some strong signs, as with residential, of people, the flight from the capital, as it were. So with commercial, there will be other businesses either coming from London or opening up premises in the West Country. So I suspect there's a lot in play for you as a business in the property sector.
Absolutely, and I think that's it's interesting you say that, because it flows into the need for workspace, doesn't it? And you know, businesses, you might on a very superficial level say yes, we can all work from home, but actually the need to collaborate in the office is so important for creativity, for supervision purposes, for all sorts of reasons, and we've worked really hard over the last month or so to get people back into the office. And actually in our Exeter office, we are a very COVID secure workplace, and yet we've got everyone back in pretty much on a full-time basis, and that's helped enormously just from a morale point of view. So yes, we'll have to see where we go with it from here, you know, in light of Boris's comments yesterday.
Yeah, I'll open that out when we've got all three of our panelists together about that point about what changes now for your business. And I suppose that speaking with other companies, those that have done surveys, which give or take is pretty much everyone, of the three options, all in the office, all at home, some combination, pretty much everybody has a majority in the some combination territory.
Yeah,
I imagine that's the same for you.
Yeah, we wouldn't be any different to that. I think there's a healthy balance, isn't there? And having said that, from a productivity point of view, I think we've been really pleasantly surprised at how productive people can be working from home. And there's always been an historical sort of reluctance to trust staff, perhaps, but you know, absolutely everyone stepped up, and we've been really, really impressed across the board. So we've certainly been embracing it from here on in.
Yeah, and I guess for you and for many in the professional service sectors, there's an extra issue when you talk about trust in terms of the regulatory environment in which you work. It's even more important for you in terms of what is said, how it's said, documented, and so on, than in other sectors, perhaps.
Agree, but I think forcing us into a situation where we had to be so remote in terms of our working, so using virtual means, was almost beneficial in that respect, because everything had to be done through email. There is always a paper trail. It's all through the systems. We've got so many safety mechanisms in place to make sure that we are compliant all the time, that whether we're at home or in the office, that doesn't really change. We're all still working in a compliant manner.
One other specific for you, then we'll pop on to the others. It's not that long back since you had the rebrand and the change of name. I just wonder how that's how you've been able to communicate that during these constrained times, and how that rebranding has gone for you.
Yeah, so we've moved an awful lot of our marketing online, so we're across all the online platforms now, and I think our branding has really been beneficial in that regard, because I think it's so striking and it stands out as soon as you see it. But we've got an in-house marketing director who works with external creative agencies, and we've been focusing very heavily on the online presence and using online tools for taking basic instructions and things as well. So keeping that engagement with the client of all age groups, because of course our client base spans every single age group, and everyone seems to have embraced it really well, which is wonderful, and learnt new technologies.
Yeah, prompted or perforce or whatever, we've all been learning a lot in these times, one way or another. And you know, if we just take that level of positive, that's a good thing. We've had to, this event, for example, we wouldn't have done this 6 months back. Multiple others, of course. Charlotte, now, if I could ask you to retrieve the video, thank you. We'll call you back in a sec. And let's have Glenn step forward, please. Glenn, good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, Greg. Good afternoon.
You are so right. It is afternoon, isn't it? Can I just, what is actually your backdrop? I'm trying to work out.
I've just moved around. Here's one of the joys of being in an office by myself. I can move stuff around the place without getting other people upset. We currently have our orange toy cars sat beside us. We did do a little event. It's actually about a year ago now, where we took about a dozen people from the local Exeter community and created a little assault course for them to drive around, a little competition, videoed it all. And we were just releasing it at the start of the pandemic. And we had a few out there. James Court, as you mentioned, picked up his award back in Donna Hart from the Family Law Company. We did a few, and to be quite honest, it didn't feel the right time to be doing it. It was just, as much as I wanted to, you know, put a smile on everyone's face, there was more important things to be looking at that time. Of course.
I actually did want to ask you a related question, a personal one for you, really. You're a naturally very gregarious fellow. How has it been personally for you that you have been, one way or another, heavily constrained in these times? And perhaps actually might be a little bit more constrained again going forwards after last night.
Indeed, yes. For those who don't know as well, I haven't really made too much of obvious on social media, but this year has been quite a challenge health-wise. I've had a quite serious backing issue that's caused problems from Christmas last year. So for me, it's been an absolute roller coaster 2020. Just about starting to find my feet when the pandemic struck. And for those who do follow us on social media, you will have noticed in the last couple of months things have dropped off a little bit, because ultimately we've had a bundle more work to do, emergency work I'd call it, things where, you know, we were getting phone calls late into the evening from people who didn't know at one stage, you know, didn't know how they were going to feed their children the week after next. That sort of, you know, very difficult conversations to have. And what that's actually led to is, you know, we've got past that, we've got some grants coming their way. And in the last few months, it's been all hands on deck trying to catch up on the normal work we'd be doing at this time, tax returns and accounts and things like that. So
let's just ask that point. So how much of your work in the last, I don't know, 6 months or so has been around loans and funding, as opposed to your support advisory work and, yes, tax returns?
So really from the end of March, really from the last time we heard Mr. Johnson say, let's all work from home, I think that probably the next month I was doing nothing more than having conversations with people. We made it a big point to call everyone. I felt it was very important to be talking and having conversations and just letting our clients know that we're there. As we try to unwrangle the grants that were in place, because there was a lot of headline pushing at the start and the fine print wasn't there. We had people who suddenly thought they were going to come into thousands of pounds and then get told, actually, no. It was a very difficult time, and we just ended up with myself personally being kind of at the forefront of that, being the point of contact. We turned around to our clients initially and immediately, and it's still actually ongoing. We haven't charged anyone for any time in relation to general advice relating to COVID, because we were lucky enough to get the £10,000 grant for our little room here. I saw that as a bit of a, you know, that's my payment for the next 6 months. Let's see what happens. We actually clocked the time, and we've just, I think we're about 10,800 in terms of the time we've spent for our clients. So I'm currently debating how we do that going forward. because we're reaching to a point where that won't be really from a business point of view. I can't keep doing that going forward. But I think that there has been a drop off in people needing the hand holding and the conversations that
I'm sure what all clients of all professional services most want is high quality advice and continuity. Far be it for me to say, but charging for your professional services absolutely strikes me as essential. Of course, one thing on the schemes, I mean, there are still some schemes still open. I think they all close pretty much, or the current batch closes at the end of this month, so very, very soon. Are you still advising clients on that? I mean, by advising, I'm assuming you're helping build the cash modelling and so on to support their case to the banks.
Yeah, so we're different from the grant point of view. If we just cover that one off, most of our clients now have claimed either a grant for the property or a self-employment grant. We're still doing the furlough grants, and we'll still be doing that into the end of next month when the scheme, as far as we are aware, will close. The financing aspect, that was a bit of a stop-start mission at the start, because the government brought out the sort of the business interruption loan scheme. It looked like it was for everyone, and it wasn't for everyone. You had to be making a decent profit beforehand, and the banks, quite rightly, I think, they were worried about covering their own backsides, basically. They wanted to make sure that everything was done properly, but it held money up at that point in time. We then obviously got the bounce back loans out, and I mean, in terms of my client base, I would say those who needed it, 75% of them claimed it themselves, didn't need any help, because the government then realised that it had to be easy. But we were always on the end of the phone to help people through, and there were questions about finances. We are cloud accountants, so we're using software like QuickBooks and Xero, and we can see on a perhaps daily basis how our clients are doing. So to be able to give them the numbers they need to complete that forms pretty quickly, was key, really. Yeah.
Once upon a time, and not very long ago at all, you were one of the youngest ever chartered accountants in the country. In perhaps a slightly strange way, and I'm careful in asking it, has your youth actually helped in the best possible way the confidence, the fearlessness of some inexperience? And I do mean that positively. Do you think it's because you haven't had those scars and wounds and experiences, it's like, you have a different sort of impetus than those of us who've been around for too many years?
I think, just to put that in context, I think I qualified, I'm just looking up on the wall, I think it's 15 years ago now, so it's right. a little time ago. But I think my training through the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales, it was even at that time very forward thinking and looked at adaptation to change. I'm very lucky in that when I was training with a firm in Exeter, originally, they were forward thinking. They had computers. I know other accountants at that time didn't. It was even in the early sort of 2000s. It wasn't always something that would be there, a necessity. But really, what's changed for me in the past sort of 5, 6, 7 years is the advent of cloud bookkeeping software, and it just changed the whole concept of sort of looking back, as we would do normally as accountants. We'd have someone bring their records in, and we would be looking, at least a year back, maybe further. We now get the opportunity to be looking in real time in some cases, and I think that adaptation, that being, these are things that are changing all the time. I'm not going to lie, I hated the fact that on a Friday evening at 5 o'clock, Rishi would get up on stage and go, basically drop the bomb. Here's what we're introducing now, and the amount of emails and text messages and WhatsApp messages and everything else that I get out that evening and that weekend. When, but in some ways, I think there's a hidden part of me that's really enjoyed it, really like the challenge of it. Although I'll hold my hand up and say I need a holiday, and I'll be quite glad, especially when the furlough grants finish going in. Although, again, that might change.
That might change, but we'll come on to that in a second. I think a couple of points there. the 5 o'clock announcement, particularly that very first furlough scheme, we were all watching it live and all trying to interpret it. It was such a bold step, but there was no detail, and it took some weeks before there was detail, and that led to complexity and uncertainty, but ultimately was very beneficial. The other, I was just going to say that point about your relative youth at the point of being the youngest. I think that's from your website, so it was no more than that. We will pick up on potential other measures from government in a moment, but for now, Glenn, thank you. And let's bring Mark forwards, if we may. Thanks. Mark, good morning, good afternoon. How are you? How's the
all good? All good, thank you. All good.
Good. So how's working from home been for you and the team? How many Marsh people Marsh commercial people are there in the?
In Exeter office, we have approximately 24 people altogether. It was amazing, really. I think that I again look back at that time. We moved out of the offices really very quickly. Exactly, I think it was middle of the week on a Wednesday. We were told that we were to be working from home, and by Friday everybody was connected back up and operational. I mean, it was a huge for the group. As you know, we're the community broker of Marsh, which is a global insurance broker, and worldwide everybody was operational by the Friday. It was an amazing thing.
And it's a strange experience that we're all further apart and yet closer still, and it's technology that's doing it. I mean, managerially for you and the team, are you working differently now than you would have done had it been you all been in the office?
Yeah, I mean, we did a lot of work with some, and we have some great growth plans for Exeter, and a lot of that was about collaboration and what we were doing in the office. So to actually break down and have to go home, it's really changed the whole leadership dynamic, and I think that some of the hardest things have been the communication with staff, again in that group. So managing client relationships and then managing colleague relationships has really added to the workload, I think, for most managers within the professional services business. It's been really.
And to be honest, quite possibly across all businesses, we're all having to work harder in all forms of communication, internally and externally, and attempting to check in as best we all can with our colleagues and how they are.
Yeah, we've done some crazy things. I think like lots of people. I think when we first started, we had WhatsApp groups that were throwing up everywhere with Friday afternoon pub sessions or virtual pub sessions. That kind of it was funny how those things sort of drifted away fairly quickly after the initial euphoria of working from home sort of died down into becoming the normal. More recently, I was very fortunate. I managed to get the majority of our team together in Newton Abbot, because we live fairly diverse from Exeter, but we all met up in Newton Abbot Park and had fish and chips, socially distanced in the middle of the park. But trying to find team building events to keep together is really important, I believe.
I mean, ordinarily in these business clubs, I wouldn't necessarily be asking quite so much about working from home, and we will come on to a bit more of it, but it's really in the context of last night, because it looks as though whatever measure it's been in recent times, it's probably going to be more in the short term and less time in offices. Come on to the business side. What differences in business have you noticed? I mean, either from your business, Marsh's point of view of new offerings or sector focuses, or the sort of demands from clients that you've seen which are different than previously?
Well, again, it's been a tough period. I think what's stood out more than anything is been the resilience and durability and creativity that's come out of clients. I think the initial shock of the lockdown and the panic that pursued right at the beginning was a bit kind of was people looking for what was we going to do, and but then the calm comes over as people then decide how to adapt their business and start to perform to create money and keep their businesses going. That has been the most amazing thing, I think. I think within that also, we've been very fortunate, touching wood, that whilst we do a lot of work in the leisure, tourism, hospitality industry, we're also heavily involved in care and construction, is that the majority of our clients have found their way through that, although in sort of, as I say, in varying degrees from the initial shock of lockdown. But that has been the most amazing thing. I think that their ability to adapt and come through this has been hugely.
And I'm sure it'll be, you know, clearly different in different sectors, but as a slightly more overview point, have the demands or requests of clients been changed in recent times? Are there needs different than previously?
Yes, I think we've tried again to give a lot more, more support, being there for, as you're probably aware, we had the issue of, I mentioned business interruption, because that's one of the things that sends a cold shudder down our back at the moment, because that's where the claims were coming from in terms of insurance for businesses that were not able to operate, and a loss of income or profit, and trying to make claims under those sections. And invariably that wasn't or isn't insured. There's been a review recently by the Financial Conduct Authority and a judgment passed down, and some of that has brought a little bit more clarity, but again, with all of these things and a number of other questions. It's the level of support, and again, as both Charlotte and Glenn have said, I think it's the communication with clients always being available. I think that I would say it's brought us closer to a lot more of our clients than we were previously. Rather than being transactional, we were part of their business, or are part of their business in helping them through this process.
Yeah, that is one of the paradoxes of the pandemic, that point about being closer, even though further apart. So, Mark, for now, if you stay on, please, and we're going to bring back Glenn and Charlotte, if that's okay. Thank you. I'd like to ask you each what you think, in sort of 3 stages, the effect on yesterday's announcements will be. 1, on your businesses, maybe your working practices, office, etc. 2, your sector, but really 3, the extra economy. So who'd like to talk about that? It was foreshadowed over a couple of days. It's quite clear there's going to be, if not a volte-face, but quite a sharp turn by the government. What do you think the impact is on your businesses?
So we're still in consultation with our heads of department to decide how best to react to yesterday's announcement, because of course we're in a very different position than we were in mid-March. The whole world stopped in mid-March, and so everybody retreated back into their homes and the economy just came to a grinding halt. That's why we saw the drop off of our instructions, of course. Now that's not the same situation. We have, as I said before, recovered to pre-COVID levels. So we need people in the office. We need people being able to be available for clients. Clients have a desire to have face-to-face contact, we find, in our sector. We are doing still a large proportion of our interaction via Zoom and other technologies, but as time has gone on, people are desperate to return to some sort of normality, and they see that as being coming into the office and signing their paper in front of you, or whatever it might be that they need to do. So we are still in a phase of trying to decide how best to adjust following the announcement. For the local economy, I really fear for the centre of Exeter if we remain in lockdown, if we all retreat back into our homes again, because of course the day-to-day businesses, or day-to-day business of local businesses, thrives off office workers in the middle of the city. So if we're not in there and we don't have our staff milling around at lunchtime doing what they do, shopping, there is going to be an enormous knock-on effect. So I really fear for Exeter, if everyone takes the line, that we should be retreating back to our homes, which we don't think we will be doing. We think we will be having that mix of a bit of home working with a bit of working in the office.
Just to push that point, and this is almost into, if I may, it's almost into a legalistic point, that if the phrase is work from home if you can, that's actually quite clear cut, and most of us, to a greater or lesser extent, can work from home in professional services or any service sector.
Yeah, well, you say that when we, I was talking to a colleague about this earlier, and I think there ought to be a tack on to the end of that phrase: work from home if you can, if your employer agrees that that's sensible for the business. Because there's a big difference between being able to sit at your desk at home and tap away and do your work. But actually, the reason it worked when we went into lockdown for us is because we had core teams in each office being able to produce the printed documents, being able to find documents from our storage rooms or our strong room, and really keeping things moving whilst the fee earners were at work. Now, that took an awful lot of commitment from the core team. It took they were under an immense amount of pressure, and I don't think we can ask that of them again, because I think everyone needs to bear the burden equally this time round.
It's a tricky area for all sorts of businesses, because if the language had been work from home if you can and it is optimal, then that's quite different from the physical ability to work from home is sort of this world. I think all of us have to make our own decision about how literal that phrase is. And indeed, from your point of view, you do have a particular sort of, dare I say, sort of physical need in people's cases to be in. How about from Marsh's point of view?
Well, we moved back into our offices from the sort of back end of August and started to bring a percentage of the staff back. That was due to be lifted and increased in October. Just not sure yet how that's going to play out at the moment. But we're open with a team of people I'm in the office today. We're say open and operational, and will remain that way. We're not accepting clients to our offices at the moment from the COVID perspective, but we are actually visiting clients again under some strict sort of guidelines in terms of visiting and meeting with clients. But I hope that we will not change given the last night's announcement.
It is such a balance. We've all got, I suspect, we've got much the same sort of perspective, that it's the apparent civic responsibility, which is to limit any possible spread of COVID or likelihood of spread, perhaps not even spread. But at the other, exactly as you said, Charlotte, and operationally, I'm sure for all businesses, there is a benefit in having people together in proximity, in collaboration, in a thing called an office, I guess, and there is a dichotomy between those, and we're all trying to navigate that.
I think that from our perspective as well, one of the things that I've noticed, and I mentioned when we were talking originally, is that how we went from the euphoria and the quality of the work that was done in the early stages, particularly what I noticed from insurance companies who are constantly, because they're usually in the city centre, they're usually in a multi-tenured building. So they have not returned to their offices. The quality of the work that's coming out of bigger organisations like that are stuck in big office blocks that are not back to work is actually slipping. And we find that the level of error that's coming from documentation that we have to check is becoming more and more daily. I mean, the service standards are not as high as they should be.
Yeah. And you're all, in your different ways, all working within a very heavily regulated environment in which documentation and accuracy is the premium offering. You have to have that as, well, the base offering almost. You have to have that in order to support your insights. And from your point of view, I mean, it's slightly different in your personal circumstances, but to the slightly more general point about whether or not companies listening to this should be literal in their interpretation, work from home if you can, or a slightly grey area, well, hang on, is it right for the business, let alone, as Charlotte's point, right for the city? What do you think?
I think, as Mark said, each business has to make their own decision depending on their own circumstances. But, you know, a lot of us have worked very hard over the last couple of months to make our workplaces COVID secure. And if you have a workplace which is entirely COVID secure, in that you don't have people sitting within 2 meters of one another, you have enough space for meetings of minds or whatever it might be to take place in the office space, then how is that any more dangerous than people going to the pub until 10 o'clock at night around a table of 6? You know, that's my question on it.
I'm not here to defend or explain, of course, the position, but I think the contrary argument would be it's about travel in part, that the more people have more interactions with more people, that may facilitate the exchange of the virus. Can I come to this point? So not necessarily for you personally, but from your observation of other businesses, how would you suggest they navigate this point between, at the margin, what might be right for the business, but also what apparently might be right from scientific advice about less travel and engagement in offices?
But from my point of view, and this is a personal view, you know, we've got to do what's right at the end of the day. And it is a very, very fine line. For us, we're not going to come back to our office until February at the earliest. And that for us is an operational decision, because we're now going to go into our tax return season. We've got a lot going on. The last thing we want to do is be coming in and being told we can't be here, or something happening within the confines of where we are, which means we have to move out, move in, and so on and so forth. It would be too disruptive. I think most businesses, business owners, first and foremost, they should be looking at their business, but they also need to look at their staff's needs, in my opinion. You know, some staff members may feel very, very isolated being at home. And a Zoom call or a Teams meeting or whatever, it may not cut it. You know, it is a very, very tricky one to decide on. I think, I'm the accountant in the room, you know, I'm going to say we should be playing by the rules. I think what we're waiting for, personally, again, my thoughts on this is I imagine we will have some form of announcement from the Chancellor before either the end of the week or the end of the month, to perhaps highlight if there is going to be any additional help to those employers who feel they need to close down completely. There was some detail released a couple of weeks ago, quite hidden away a little bit, that in areas of high intensity of the virus, these sort of, you know, places like Bolton and Newcastle, Birmingham, where they're sort of starting to really shut down. The government are going to be giving grants out similar to the £10,000, the business rate grant that they gave in March. It's £1,000 or £1,500 for every 3 weeks that we're shut. Now, if that comes into place, I think you'll see a lot of employers actually going, well, we'll take the money and send our staff home. It would, to me, would be a no-brainer. It's partly that, but I do appreciate Charlotte from Charlotte's point of view. You know, it's an operational thing. I would personally like us all to be in a room together in the next 3-4 months, because I know for doing tax returns and things like that, you know, we need to be bouncing off each other quick, and there's only so much that technology can do from that side of it. But we're going to try and do the right thing from my point of view, and stay at home, and only meet when we really need to.
It's hard. I want to come on to one other aspect of business, which is that by the nature of professional services, probably more so than any other sector, you thrive on collaboration. On complex pieces, you have complementary skills from other companies. You're referring business to each other in different ways. And there's an awful lot of networking and so on. The vast majority of it hasn't been able to happen, and near term may not be either. So how have you sought to maintain that level of collaboration and keep up your new impetuses and so on from other complementary companies?
I think that's a tough one. I think in many ways it's been really hard. I think it's down to Zoom meetings. We're a member of a number of the regional chambers of commerce, and those have all been conducted on Zoom meetings, and we've tried to spread that workload across our development teams to make sure that we're active and there to be seen by everyone.
Yeah. Any other top tips about this, of how you? I mean, I'm sure you're exactly right. The vast majority, of course, is Zoom. But are there other ways in which you've been able to form new partnerships and so on, or seek new relationships?
I personally haven't been seeking new relationships at this time. I've been consolidating the existing ones that I've got, and that's been a combination of email exchanges, telephone calls, virtual coffees, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I have met up with a couple of contacts for a socially distanced coffee in town as well. So, it's just keeping the existing contacts going. I think it's far too early to be making those new contacts, because that takes time, and I just don't have the time at the moment. There's too much else to do and focus on. But hopefully we will all find a way to move through this into the new year with some new enthusiasm and energy as well.
Okay, I'm just going to bring in a question from James Moore. Glenn raises a very important observation. You'll be pleased to know that, Glenn. Perhaps we should consider taking into consideration the local COVID levels when encouraging and supporting our staff. Exeter spread the Southwest has very low levels, and in many ways, slightly surprisingly so, given the sheer amount of people in the summer months coming to the Southwest. It's maintained low. We should have a flexible approach when managing staff levels, with the ability to go remote as and when required, rather than a binary in or out. Government has to be binary, and that's been one of the critiques of this government. They've not been clear enough. But the point remains, the Southwest has had materially less experience of coronavirus than elsewhere. Do you factor that in when thinking about your businesses? Think, well, actually, it isn't that much of a risk. It really isn't. Or is it, it's the binary approach, as James is suggesting that government has previously tried to enact?
In terms of our business, because our head office is in New York, global, and so the instructions come down from high. So it's very hard. I made myself fairly unpopular within our senior management because I was constantly pushing the fact that we're in a self-contained building. All my staff travel to work by car. Nobody was on public transport, and I have so much space in my building that I could get everybody in back and 2 meters separated. But it took me a long time to get to. I was probably the first Marsh commercial office to open, but it took a long time and a lot of irritating phone calls to my bosses to make sure that that could happen. But I think we do need to get the teams back. I really do. I think it's as soon as we can. And I think that the differentiators in the infections per 100,000 in our area is another example of those things where it actually hasn't caught here as much as it has everywhere else.
I heard an ingenious idea last night that from someone who said that just as there have been local lockdowns until very recently, as mentioned in Bolton, Newcastle, wherever, we may see the opposite effect, which is local unlockdowns. So whilst there's a across the country stricture, there may be pocketed areas that say, well, actually, your levels are so low, you have a degree more freedom from government. Which seems a very pragmatic. It seems that the sort of quid pro quo of the lockdown in the bad areas, there's a sort of release in the good areas. Government can't do that yet. They have to have a standard approach for the next few days, few weeks, or whatever. But who knows? There may be the unlockdown approach as well. James added, by the way, Mark, really good, positive and safe approach. So he's supportive. We're all trying to be supportive and thoughtful. I want to come on to 2 points about the nature of professional services and how you, in the broader terms, generate business. One way or another, much of your value, individually as companies, but in your sectors, is enshrined in the brand and in the trust that as individuals and senior people you have. And of course, there are many companies in your sector who would offer broadly the same type of things. They have similar accreditations, qualifications you and your teams have. And clients can know that. This is a time of transparency. We can all go through provenance, websites, etc. So how do you engender trust, and how do you further explain and add value to your brand such that you can support your business efforts? Trust and brand.
And I think it's a fantastic question. I think it's a really tough one to answer in these current circumstances. We have done a lot of work, and I know that I've seen a lot of Wollens information going out around the market, but he's trying to get detail out about, support for businesses. From our perspective, it's not just about insurance, it's about staff, it's about risk, managing process, being consultative through the processes, and really putting that information out there as broadly as we possibly can at the moment to make everybody aware that we're here and willing to offer our services, whatever that might be. And insurance is just part of that process. It's not the be all and end all.
I mean, it's sort of inevitable for any business, those watching live or on YouTube subsequently, they absolutely cannot and won't have your level of expertise. They're, as I would be, we'll be trusting you, whichever your expertise is. And how you engender that trust is a really challenging thing. And the best professional services, and you in different ways are exemplars of that. But that's a bigger challenge in these times. Charlotte, we talked briefly about your brand, but what about the point about trust?
Yeah, so we've been, as Mark says, we've been working very hard to publish an awful lot of useful articles, tips for people how to get through the crisis and certain aspects of the crisis, which hopefully will engender trust because it's free and it's we're not expecting necessarily anything back from it, but we want to engage with people, and we have had that engagement. We've had people responding to questionnaires that we put out. We've offered free templates for various things, and they've engaged for those, and that sort of hopefully sets up the basis for a long-term relationship. If we can help them now, then hopefully they'll remember that and come back to us when times are far easier.
Yeah, and Glenn, trust and brand, how's that playing out for you, and how critical is that in terms of your business development?
I'd say from our point of view, it's all in the service. So it's everything we've been doing for all our clients at the moment. And in fact, the trust is probably the other way around. We're trusting our clients to spread the word and say they've had a good service during a very, very difficult time in their lives. As I mentioned earlier, I'm doing a little bit less on social media. I used to be on all the time. That will get built up again. We can always rebuild from these things, but ultimately, yeah, that's the way we're looking at it. And I'll be honest, it's starting to reap the benefits. We've had 7 new leads in the last week, and
Right.
What's positive about that is it's people who have had a change in circumstances due to COVID who are commencing a new business in the Exeter area. And not letting COVID get in the way of their plans, their dreams. I think, there is going to be, there's still, unfortunately, I think we're going to lose businesses in the local area. That's just going to be the circumstances. But from those ashes, hopefully the phoenixes will rise, and you will end up with some fresh brands, some fresh businesses out there offering perhaps niche services and products that haven't been available perhaps in the Exeter area. And I am a positive person. I believe that the economy will actually grow out of this in the long run.
Well, that is a very positive perspective. There's related to what you've just said, there's almost too much of a cliche, which is we are all in this together, which I think we heard from a certain other previous Prime Minister about a certain other case. But it seems to me that one of the things we can all do is help each other, whether that's through referrals, maybe, of course, like you do ordinarily, but also the whole shop local, support local businesses, support independents, because they are the companies who, to Charlotte's point earlier, in the near term and maybe mid-term are most under threat because there isn't the activity in the broader sense through the city. We absolutely want to champion the local businesses, of course, for Exeter Living every time. I want to come to the macro point, which is, you touched on it, Glenn, but I want to hear a little bit more about this. There is rising pressure on government. Just this morning, just prior to this, I read a few comments from Tory MPs saying that something more needs to be done for businesses. The CBI is saying it, the Labour Party is saying it, TUC is saying it. Otherwise, there is going to be an horrendous crash, specifically around unemployment. One, do you think government will do anything even reasonably material? And two, if so, what? Who'd like to say that?
I'll make a start. But yeah, I mean, it's really, I am expecting something. I'm expecting some form of announcement in the next week. And what that will be, you know, we didn't know that they would ever consider giving 80% of an employee's wages. I think we're going to see a more tailored approach. I, as much as I think the furlough scheme may disappear, I think we'll see a sort of furlough 2 scheme come out, which may target more sort of certain industries, the hospitality industry, especially at the moment. The only thing is, there's only so much help you can give. You know, if we could be in this situation for another couple of years, you just don't know. And it's a real tricky one. I can actually potentially see something happening maybe around VAT again, coming up to Christmas to get people to spend money. Problem is, in the long run, you know, you may need that money in your bank. So it's a real tricky one. It's I'm glad I'm not making those decisions.
Well, I mean, one other observation in this area is that the German government in particular, but also the French government, have actually got a more profound version of the furlough system, which is effectively wage subsidy, which have been inimical to any government until recent times. But their view is to have it tailored and longer. That will help support a more sustainable recovery and support businesses in the short term. What about Mark or Charlotte? Do you think the government either could or will do anything, and if so, what might that be?
Yeah, again, I'm not too sure at the moment. We've certainly had no feedback or nothing come through from our teams about that at the moment. Our thoughts are that maybe insurance premium tax is a way of recovering some of that money at a future date, because at the moment insurance premium tax is only 12%, and it's kind of like a silent tax, gets added to insurance premiums. Initially, when insurance premium tax was brought in, it was the insurance companies were able to cover some of that cost or reduce their premiums in order to sustain that. But the insurance market is in quite a difficult position itself at the moment, and premiums are rising across a number of different sectors of liability. But I think that insurance premium tax is a way that the government may try to recover some of its funds. So rather than actually bringing out benefits, we're more focused on where's the money going to come back to pay back some of the money that they're laying out. We think
Yes.
That's
Charlotte, could, should, might, will, what do you reckon?
I would hope that they might look again at the furlough scheme. Whether they will or not is another matter. Ultimately, we're either going to have an awful lot of people being made redundant and claiming universal credit, or we're going to keep them in employment through an extended or amended furlough scheme. So one way or the other, the government need to put more money into the pot.
Yeah, yeah, and in having people on whatever scheme, they're not contributing tax revenue. So the delta between the absence of tax revenue, whatever it costs, as opposed to, you know, macroeconomic theory is not really our purview today, but it's crossed that Rishi Sunak comes up with another scheme, and preferably, at least from Glenn's point of view, not at 5:20 on a Friday again. Let's come on to one last question, and then we'll come on to the point about the good that people do. As self-evidently smart thinkers from leading professional service companies, if you have one piece of advice for the businesses of Exeter listening to this, what advice might that be in these times?
I think it's about motivation. I'm huge about trying to keep morale up amongst our staff and motivation. I think, Glenn, it's about having a positive mental attitude. So it's communication, focus and support, I think, are the three things that I really bring to my business to make sure that we drive on, we deliver performance for our group and our customers. So I think we just really need to drive on and stay positive.
You're good on your triptychs, Mark. I know you said earlier, you said resilience, durability and creativity, and you've now got communication, by handwriting and support. So well done. I love the rhythm of that. I bought Charlotte and Glenn a little bit of time. So come on, what single piece of advice would you give?
I think it's to exude positivity beyond your own firm as well, because I absolutely agree you need to keep your team motivated, but unless we have clients or customers willing to buy services or products, then there is no business. So I think everyone has a public duty to keep the morale up.
Well, Charlotte, you may think this is rather egregious, but I'm going to go there anyway, which is, to be honest, that's a key part of us as a business with Exeter Living, the Exeter Living Awards and Exeter Property Award, precisely is to highlight the positive, to celebrate the good and so on. I mean, I said at the beginning, it is emotional for us. We want to get out there and tell those good stories. So we absolutely play that part. Please feed your information into Exeter Living. And of course, commercially support us. We're a business like any other. Glenn, your one key point.
I would say don't panic. Let's try not to panic. I mean, it's very, very easy. Things are going to change, I'm sure, again. You know, we've heard about potential circuit breakers or whatever they call them, you know, 2-week shutdown periods. Let's all just, as I said, keep positive about business. Let's keep having conversations in the local area. And, you know, we've got loads of online networking groups and LinkedIn and everything else. Just keep talking and learning about each other. I think that's just the one thing I would say. Just, you know, keep positive.
Keep positive. Also, keep sharing the good that people do, which we've been doing through the social media campaign #Exeter Together. I would ask each of you now just to give a brief example of the good that people have been doing in recent times. Start with you, Glenn.
Recent good. I mean, I'm the treasurer of Phonic FM. You may know it's Exeter's community radio station. We have about 80 members, 80, 90 members. And obviously, initially, the whole thing had to close down and just be playing music out. But with a lot of help from Ofcom, for example, Exeter Phoenix as well, very supportive in terms of our rent fees. It's been really great to see the conversations going on and people being able to go back and do their hobby and take their mind off what's going on outside the studio doors. So that's my one sort of positive area at the moment.
Very good. Mark, yours.
Yeah, I'd like to give a big shout out to all the care workers who, in our area, we cover the care sector, who did a phenomenal job, particularly those that were actually living in the care homes and away from their own families during the early stages of all of this. And again, they're going through a very difficult time. So I think it's our care workers that are outstanding, unbelievable.
Very, very thoughtful. Thank you. Charlotte.
I'm a trustee of Hospice Care, which, as you know, is a local Exeter charity. And not only do we need to say an absolutely enormous thank you to the staff there who have kept the care provision going, we also need to say a big thank you to the supporters who have just been phenomenal through this time. Funding for the charity sector is very, very difficult. It's tough for all charities. So they can't have enough support, so please do keep giving. But I think my message to the business community is keep supporting. It would be very easy to look at the bottom line and think, where can we cut costs, and let's take out our charitable support. Please don't do that. Please support, continue to give it, because they're really offering great services all round.
Yeah, that's a great rallying cry to end on, and thank you for that. Thank you to each. I've got a couple more points to make in closing, but on behalf of everyone watching today and on YouTube subsequently, thanks to our panellists, Charlotte McGregor of Wollens, Glenn Redler of GX Accounts, and Mark Minton of Marsh Commercial. And thank you for your time and questions today. We've not been able to take all of those, but most of them certainly. Look out for our next Exeter Living Business Club next month. Please talk to us about the Exeter Living Business Surgeries. Just to briefly say these are for B2B companies with a service offering of whatever sort. We can go into much greater depth, providing a showcase for your expertise. It's not a sales forum so much as providing free, valuable, insightful information, because gosh, we all need that at this moment. We're also launching Exeter Living Presents, which is a similar type of approach for consumer-facing companies. Again, deep dives into one company's particular offering. Very best wishes to our panelists and all those in the professional services navigating these times. Good luck, good wisdom to all. Please get your nominations in for the Exeter Property Awards and support those as a means of bringing the sector together. Talk to us if you wish, of course, about the sponsorships. We'd be very grateful for that. But in closing, just a thought. Perhaps think of these times in this way. When the tide goes out, the shore is revealed in all its teeming complexities of the beautiful, the unexpected, the plain weirdly unidentifiable, and our new washed reality. It's the same in these times. The tide of uncertainties has rolled back since the spring, revealing us in our new peculiar surroundings. And hitherto, good has been revealed. Enough. This has been a Media Clash production, and this has been the Exeter Living Business Club. Thank you very much. Exeter together. Thank you.
Thank you.